welcome. So before we all begin, I'd like to just have us all take a moment and settle into our spot and take a nice deep breath as we open in prayer. Let us pray. Infinite Spirit, we are so grateful for your presence around us always, your proof of continuity in your messages, your support and your inspiration. Open our hearts and our minds to that continual love and blessings. We ask a special blessing on our mediums this evening as they open their hearts and minds to be the voice for you and give loving, uplifting, and the proof of continuity message to all here this evening. Amen. So as we begin our evening, I'll just let you know a little brief things about how things are going to work. Shortly, Stephen Vogel will give us a nice history of the Victorian Seance or Home Circle as we are having here tonight. When he is finished, I will introduce the mediums that will be working tonight. And then after that, you will be put into a breakout room. For those of you who might not be familiar with the breakout room, we ask that when your screen pops up, it'll say, "Move me to this room." And you click yes, and you will enter a room with a medium. That medium will deliver spirit messages in which the way spirit moves them. We ask that you unmute yourself if they need to hear your voice. It is private. Messages will not be recorded. And afterwards, about 50 minutes, they will have to demonstrate mediumship. Afterwards, we will come together for a blessing, and we'll continue on back into the old Zoom room so we can close out our celebration of Hydesville Day. So thank you all for being here and supporting our precious Hydesville Memorial Park. And Steve, I will turn it now over to you for your intro. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Good evening, everyone. Let's start with the definition of the word seance so that we all have an understanding of what we're speaking about tonight, what you're about to experience tonight. Webster's has two definitions for the word. The first is session or sitting. The second is a spiritualist meeting to receive spirit communications. So even Webster honors the spiritualist tradition that we all know as a seance. According to Wikipedia, quote, "A seance is an attempt to communicate with spirits." The word seance comes from the French word for session. It evolved from the old French word seoir, to sit. And that comes from the Latin sedere, sit. In French, the word's meaning is quite general. One may, for example, speak of une séance de cinéma, a movie session. In English, however, the word came to be used specifically for a meeting of people who are gathered to listen to a spirit medium discourse with or relay messages from spirits. In modern English usage, participants need not be seated while engaged in a séance. The history of seances literally begins with the Fox sisters and their mother, Mrs. Margaret Fox. As we've heard earlier today from our players, our Hydesville players, one of the questions Mrs. Fox asked the Hydesville spirit on March 31st was, quote, "Will you continue to rap if I call in my neighbors that they may hear it too?" She got an affirmative response, and the Redfields were invited to witness the rappings, where the spirit revealed more of its personal history. As we've heard from Tracy Murphy at the Hydesville Foundation property, from the Reverend Cozy Allen, and from our players, eyewitnesses that night, March 31st, recorded 300 to 500 visitors witnessing the phenomena in the Fox cottage. Later, at the home of Isaac and Amy Post in Rochester, New York, the spirit encouraged the Fox sisters as follows, quote, "Dear friends, you must proclaim these truths to the world. This is the dawning of a new era. You must not try to conceal it any longer. When you do your duty, God will protect you, and the good spirit will watch over you. Fox sisters made their first public demonstration of the wrappings in Corinthian Hall in downtown Rochester on November 14th, 1849. This was followed with public meetings in Albany, New York, and within 5 months, other public meetings in Buffalo, New York City, and then Cleveland, Ohio, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The ability to communicate with human spirits spread amongst the public like a wild prairie fire. The public demonstrations so impressed the people who attended these public meetings that they tried to reproduce the phenomena at home. When success occurred, they would invite their family, friends, and neighbors in to communicate with spirits. These people then went out and formed their own home circles. By the summer of 1851, the New York Circle had formed as the first organization for the propagation of the facts and truths of spiritualism. Home circles and seances spread all throughout the Northeast, up into New England, down into the mid-Atlantic states, and out into the Midwest. Public demonstrations of mediumship jumped across the Atlantic Ocean to Great Britain and the European continent, and home circles and seances sprang up there too and flourished. The popularity of seances grew so dramatically in the mid-1800s for several reasons. One, of course, was the truth of spiritualism regarding the continuity of life after physical death and communication with those deceased loved ones that both triggered and spread with the growth of seances. Mid-19th century social conditions also fostered the growth of seances. We must remember that these people during the Victorian era had no electricity, no telephone, no radio, no television, and certainly no internet to preoccupy them or their time. After an evening meal, or maybe on a weekend afternoon, people would gather at the fireplace or around a table and read, share stories, or play games together, like card games or board games, checkers, chess. With the advent of spiritualism, these social gatherings naturally evolved in many households into seances. Perhaps the best known series of seances was conducted at that time were those of Mary Todd Lincoln, who, grieving the loss of two of her sons, Eddie in 1850 and Willie in 1862, often visited the home of the Lorries, who were well-known Georgetown mediums in the District of Columbia. Mrs. Lincoln also organized as many as 8 spiritualist seances in the White House that were attended by her husband, President Abraham Lincoln, and other prominent members of society. For example, President Lincoln attended one seance on April 23, 1863, when the medium Nettie Colburn Maynard described going into trance and advising the president about enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation, with spirit urging him to move forward and ignore those who wanted to delay its enforcement. Lincoln later confirmed that he actually had been under considerable pressure to delay or water down the proclamation and its enforcement. In another White House seance, the piano actually began to levitate, and Mrs. Lincoln called the president into the room to help bring the piano back down to the floor. But neither him sitting on the piano nor his Army adjutant officer joining him on the piano could bring it back down to the floor until spirit decided it was time to do so. This seance is documented in the adjutant's diary. Working mediums often referred to and advertised their group reading circles as seances. Popular illustrations and photographs of the time often depicted a group of adults sitting around a circular table, their hands resting on the tabletop, with their pinkies or little fingers touching those of their neighbors. In addition to physically linking the group's energy, these fingers touching also served as a form of collective monitoring of the group's hands as a means of deterring fraud should physical mediumship begin to occur. Other factors contributing to the popularity of seances were the conditions soldiers fought and died under during the wars of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Soldiers in the American Civil War carried no standard identification, and the bodies of those killed during battles often were buried anonymously, sometimes in mass graves. The families of many of the more than 600,000 killed during the Civil War never learned why their husband, father, or son never returned home after the war. In other words, there was a pent-up, increased demand, so to speak, for mediumistic services to reconnect with those lost loved ones during and after the Civil War. In the United States, the same was true during and after the Spanish-American War of 1898, and especially so during and after World War I, from 1914 to 1918. Thus, we can see there were several reasons for the dramatic increase in the popularity of spiritualist message seances from 1848 well into the 20th century. Thank you. Back to you, Stacy.
I'd like to now take a moment to introduce the mediums that are working tonight. Tonight with us we have the Reverend Dr. Rosemary Calderado. She is an NSAC ordained minister and holds the NSAC credentials of Certified Medium, Commissioned Healer, and National Spiritualist Teacher. She is a member of the Maurice Institute, as well as a member of the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment in Falls Church, Virginia. We also have with us this evening the Reverend Maurice Culverson, and she is the pastor of the Church of Spirit in Chicago, the first female and African American to hold that position. Reverend Culverson is also the first African American since 1924 to hold the trustee position on the board of directors of the National Spiritualist Association of Churches. She has served as the president of the NSAC Illinois chapter, and she is the founder for the Institute of Positive Living and the executive director of the Open Book program. We also have the pleasure to have the Reverend Lelia Cutler, and she is the senior minister at the Memorial Spiritualist Church. Reverend Cutler teaches classes in meditation, mediumship, and a series of classes on comparative religion and healing. She is the treasurer of the Maurice Pratt Institute, and she served on the NSAC board for over 15 years, also as a past president of the NSAC. I'm also pleased to welcome the Reverend Celeste Elliot, who is an ordained spiritual minister and medium who works, lives, serves, and plays in Lilydale, New York. Her attraction to spiritualism is the philosophy of peace, healing, and growth. Celeste likes to travel via Zoom around the world, serving churches in parts of Canada and the United States. When she's not off studying or volunteering, she is communing with coffee. I also like to welcome the Reverend Lorraine Radice of the Church of Spiritual Growth in NSAC Church in Burlington, Massachusetts, a longtime member of the NSAC. She is a national spiritualist teacher and certified medium, along with over 30 years of study and experience, having studied under many talented and well-established NSAC spiritualists. She uses her gifts and spiritual insight to inspire the unfoldment and enlightenment of everyone she meets. I'm also pleased to welcome the Reverend Javi Richards, is the pastor of the Church of Living Spirit in Phoenix, Arizona, which is part of the NSAC. She is an ordained minister, national spiritualist teacher, certified medium, commissioned healer. She is a trustee on the national board and the director of Lyceums. She is a fifth-generation spiritualist who truly loves teaching and helping explain spiritualism and its aspects to everyone. We also have with us the Reverend Nancy Rael. She is a spiritualist minister, certified medium, healer, and a spiritual missionary ordained from the National Spiritualist Association of Churches. She is the current pastor of the J.T. and E.J. Crumbaugh Spiritualist Church in Leroy, Illinois. She is the founding pastor of the Spiritualist Chapel in the Woods in Cherry Valley, Illinois. She is the editor of the newsletter Yours Fraternally for the International Spiritualist Federation, known as ISF. Nancy is experienced in all forms of mediumship and has a special love for trance and physical mediumship. I also like to welcome Siobhan Carlson, who is a national spiritualist teacher, certified medium, and commissioned healer. She serves and is the vice president of the First Spiritualist Church of West Allis in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She is the president of the Licentiate Minister and Certified Mediums Club within the NSAC. And lastly, Reverend Sheila Leedy, who is a spiritualist, medium, teacher, and speaker. Her spiritual gifts include clairsentience, clairvoyance, and psychic abilities. Sheila's uplifting and unique style of mediumship and teaching has developed over the years. She has spent attending classes, seminars, and spiritualist meetings nationally and abroad. She has studied at the world-renowned Arthur Findlay College of Spiritualism in England, and she is an independent ordained minister at the Sun Spiritualist Camp in Arizona. So I'd like to welcome all of you and our mediums this evening. We will be moving into our breakout rooms. So I will be pressing this button again. If you're not familiar, it will ask to move. And I know I'm sorry if some of you need to be renamed. I'm sorry. I will work on that. I'll come and pop into the room. I know. I think we have Maggie Fox here. I'm really excited. Whoever room she goes in, watch out. The media might just go like, we'll let Maggie speak. Anyways, go ahead and press the button as soon as it says to welcome you into the room, and I will be here. If you need me, you can raise your hand, and I will find you. All right. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the demonstration of mediumship, and may Spirit bring you uplifting, loving messages.